Hi, my name is Kevin Furman. Thanks for checking out 10 Steps to Unbelievable Rolls. This is step 2. And if you haven't checked out the intro in step 1, I highly recommend you do that because I do cover things that I'm not going to cover here. And some of it may or may not make sense. So I want to make sure you go through those steps. Don't skip through things. If you tend to skip through stuff, you're like, oh, I'll just go to step 10. I'm good. I can play. Okay, that's fine. Good luck. I don't know if that's really going to work or not. I know it will work if you take all 10 steps and you go through the process the way you're supposed to. If you start skipping around, you just minimize your effectiveness. That's all. So, I guess you can do whatever you want, but I wouldn't do that. Anyway, so here's the step 2. Step 2 involves the same sort of process as far as approach to the drum as step 1. Step 1 was the free stroke. So you want to make sure you're doing the free stroke correctly, very, very quickly. Use your wrist only, right? Throw the stick down, fingers pop, they're pointed at the ground. Make sure you're not wrapping your fingers around the stick, your thumb and your first finger. Keep that fulcrum point intact. Okay, so again, that went by fast. Check out step 1 that goes into detail. All right, anyway, so you're using the free stroke. But what you want to do is instead of throwing the stick hard enough for the stick to pop up and stop here, what you really want to do is drop it a little less strong, right? Just kind of drop the stick and let it bounce as many times as you can, as you can let it, so to speak. Now, let it bounce. And that's sort of the term I like to use. You don't need to make it bounce. Physics will take care of a lot of the bouncing for you. You just basically kind of need to get out of the way of the stick, because if you try to make it bounce, which is what a lot of people do, watch my hand, I'll show you, they'll tend to do something like this. So notice my wrist is moving more. My hand is moving up and down with the stick, trying to make it bounce. Yeah, don't do that. Okay, let it bounce. Slower bounces right now are really good. So it's okay for it to go really slow. We're gonna go fast in this process, but right now you need to get used to not squeezing. So really this is another point of not squeezing the stick. Obviously you gotta work on both hands. So here's another view of it. All right, so you can see both hands working, so to speak. So notice my back 3 fingers, they pop off the stick. I let my fulcrum stay intact. I don't change anything about my fulcrum other than just letting the stick bounce up and down in my hand. Don't try to do anything. So there's no motion with my wrist. It's all just stick bounces on its own. You want to just let it bounce as many times as it'll go. If it tends to bounce quick, like say it does that, kind of dies or whatever, you probably are still squeezing a little bit. So go back and do the free stroke some more and just let the stick be free to bounce. Okay? It's all about the stick, letting the stick work, not making the stick work for you. So there's that. So hand separate, obviously you definitely want to do, I'd say 30 seconds on your strong hand, a minute on your weak hand at least, right? When you practice, you sit down and practice like, okay, I'm going to work on my technique. Great, I would do this. It doesn't seem like much of a technique thing, but really what you're doing is getting rid of squeezing, and that's a huge, huge benefit to your playing. You can play a lot more relaxed, and when you're more relaxed, you can play faster, it's easier to do things, and you have no limit. So I would highly recommend taking the time to do this. It may seem simple, it may seem, kind of like, well, that's easy, whatever. I know how to do that. Well, a lot of this stuff isn't about knowing. It's about doing. This is an exercise. This isn't about drumming right now, although it's a technique idea. It's a technique builder. It's an exercise builder. Much like in sports, like say football. Let's say you in practice, a lot of times people will run through tires. That seems pretty common. Right? And you don't see tires on the field, so it does, like, why are we running through tires, right? It's a way to train your muscles to react the right way, to get your knees up, to move quicker, right? So you're able to move quicker on the field, blah, blah, blah. So as one analogy, that's why. This is very much like that. It's a training, muscle training exercise. So, although it may not seem like it's related to rolls at all, it is. And it's all about, the point is that you're not squeezing the stick anymore and you're letting the stick do all of the work. So there's that. Also, be careful that you don't help the stick at all and that you let it bounce a bunch. Watch your hand, be careful with it, really go through it, and make sure that you're just following all the basic idea of relaxed, no tension in your rolling, you're holding the stick. Okay, one more thing to do. This is a great point where you start to you really investigate like where to hold the stick. Where's the optimal spot to hold on the stick? So here's what I recommend. If you hold on the stick at the very end with your thumb and forefinger at the very end, none of it with the other fingers, and drop it like a free stroke, you'll notice it's very, very dead. It doesn't bounce hardly at all. Right? It feels just like a big bleh, right? So if you gradually move up, so if you kind of move up the stick a little bit, right, drop it some more, it's still dead, right, move up a little bit more, I'm getting some more bounces, but it still feels kind of sluggish, okay, and I'll keep going, okay, that's starting to feel okay, and then I go a little bit more, wow, that's feeling pretty good there, I'm going to keep going, right, if you go all the way to the middle, if you get to the middle of the stick, if you measure the middle, it should actually, if you're doing this right, it'll do this, where i.e. it doesn't bounce. The reason it doesn't bounce is there's more weight on the back end. Hence, you know, it's got the tip on the front, it's shaved off some wood, so if you're right in the middle of the stick, it won't bounce. If it is bouncing, you're still squeezing, you're trying to make it bounce, okay? So if you're doing this correctly and you're holding in the middle of the stick, it won't, because all the weight's back here. So this is where you can find out that a third of the way up is the stick is really a very good place to start. You may be a little bit ahead, a little bit behind, depending on your hand and the stick, but really close to that third of the way up is really ideal. So anyway, experiment with that with both hands, right? So go ahead and go through the process with both hands, moving a little bit way up the stick. You'll start to feel, okay, yeah, that's starting to bounce. Oh, wait, no. As I get closer to the middle, they start to bounce lighter. You don't hear the extra bounces as much. So again, third of the way up, that's the way to go, but that's why. So you can experiment with that right now, and it'll make a lot of sense to your hand. Good training exercise also in this step. All right, 30 seconds a day, at least on each hand. Minute with your weak hand would be really smart. And we'll see you at step 3. Thanks for checking it out.